The delicate teacup nearly shattered in my trembling hands as those words, sharp as daggers, pierced the festive air of the baby shower. When the old lady goes to the nursing home, the bedroom becomes the nursery, my daughter-in-law Anna announced with a champagne flute raised high, her smile never quite reaching her cold eyes. In that moment, surrounded by decorations I had spent 3 days arranging in my own home of 43 years, I felt myself being erased by a woman half my age. I'm Felicia, 65 years old, and what cut deeper than Sarah's casual cruelty wasn't even the assumption that I'd soon be shipped off to some facility. No. What wounded me to my core was my son Thomas's reaction. He chuckled. My only child, the boy I had raised alone after my husband James died of cancer, actually laughed at the prospect of discarding me like worn-out furniture. Mom's got plenty of life in her yet, he finally said. But his words rang hollow as his arm remained firmly around Sarah's waist. Their united front against me now undeniable. The following weeks revealed patterns in Sarah's behavior that my humiliation had initially blinded me to hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room. Mysterious appointments that didn't align with her pregnancy schedule, and mail from a law firm she quickly concealed. My friend Margaret thought I might be overreacting because of the hurtful toast, but when I overheard Sarah on the phone saying, "He doesn't suspect anything," my suspicions crystallized into certainty. My teacher's intuition, honed through 40 years of recognizing deception in high school students, led me to investigate further. In Sarah's nightstand, I discovered a small address book with one name appearing repeatedly, Robert W. Later that night, I searched for Sarah on Facebook, while her profile showed only pregnancy updates and photos with Thomas. Robert Wilson's profile revealed numerous pictures of him with Sarah spanning several years, including some from just 8 months ago, around when she announced her pregnancy. This timeline didn't add up, as Sarah had only been with Thomas for 18 months. Desperate for the truth, I contacted my former colleague, Patricia Sullivan, now a private investigator. The evidence she gathered confirmed my worst fears. Photographs of Sarah with Robert holding hands in a park, embracing outside a lawyer's office, entering a hotel together. Patricia also uncovered financial records showing Sarah had been systematically moving money from Thomas's accounts and inquiring about the property value of my house. Most damning was a draft agreement showing Robert had signed away parental rights in exchange for a substantial financial settlement. The sickening truth became clear: the baby wasn't Thomas's. Sarah was using my son for financial support while maintaining her relationship with Robert. And my home, where I'd raised Thomas, where James and I had built our life, was part of her calculation. When Sarah went into labor 2 weeks early, I seized the opportunity to collect DNA samples from both the baby and Thomas. The results were unequivocal. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. The probability of paternity is 0%. The confrontation came when Thomas brought Sarah and baby James, named after my late husband, home from the hospital. As they settled in the living room, I presented the evidence, the DNA test results, Patricia's photographs, the financial records. Sarah's denial quickly turned to defiance. "Fine, you want the truth?" "Yes, James is Robert's biological child," she finally admitted. "But we had an agreement Robert wasn't ready to be a father, but he didn't want me to get an abortion. Thomas wanted a family. It was a perfect solution." "A perfect solution," Thomas echoed, his face ashen. "To use me as a human ATM while you continued seeing him to let me believe this child was mine." That evening, Sarah left with the baby, threatening legal action that would ultimately fail due to her documented fraud. The months that followed were painful, but healing. Thomas converted what had briefly been the nursery into an art studio for me, encouraging me to pursue the passion I'd abandoned 30 years ago to care for him after James died. "You've spent your life putting everyone else first, Mom," he told me. "It's time for your second chapter." In Sarah's attempt to erase me, she had inadvertently helped me reclaim my voice, my space, my very self. At 65, far from being relegated to a nursing home, I was just beginning anew. I moved through my morning routine with renewed purpose, the humiliation of honest toast having hardened into resolve overnight. My home, the one I'd shared with James for decades before his passing, suddenly felt like unfamiliar territory. I watched through new eyes as the household stirred to life around me. Thomas left early for work, kissing Anna goodbye at the door, while barely acknowledging me with a distracted, "See you tonight, Mom." The moment he was gone, I noticed how she changed her saccharine smile, dropping instantly, her posture relaxing as if relieved to shed a heavy costume. "I'm going out for a bit," Anna announced, not bothering to look at me as she gathered her purse. "Don't wait up for lunch." "Doctor's appointment?" I asked casually, stirring my tea. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Yes, routine checkup." I nodded, saying nothing more. But as she walked out, I noticed something odd. She was wearing 3-inch heels. In her 7th month of pregnancy, when she'd been complaining constantly about swollen feet, she'd chosen heels for a doctor's appointment. The inconsistency nagged at me throughout the morning. For the next 2 weeks, I observed Anna carefully, documenting her movements in a small notebook I kept hidden in my nightstand drawer. The more I watched, the more inconsistencies I found. Tuesday, she claimed to be meeting her pregnancy support group, but returned with shopping bags from stores across town. Thursday, she mentioned having lunch with her mother, yet when I called Evelyn later that day to thank her for the baby shower gift, she mentioned being at work all day. "You seem distracted, Felicia Cud," Margaret said over coffee at our weekly get-together. We'd been friends for 30 years, had weathered marriages, children, and now widowhood together. "Something's not right with Anna," I admitted, lowering my voice, though we were alone in my kitchen. "She's hiding something." Margaret set down her cup. "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but she's constantly on her phone texting someone. When Thomas is around, she's the perfect expectant mother. The moment he leaves, she transforms." "Maybe it's just pregnancy hormones," Margaret suggested. I shook my head. "No, it's more than that." Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone saying, "He doesn't suspect anything." And when she saw me, she hung up immediately. Margaret's expression softened with concern. "Felicia, are you sure you're not just looking for problems after what she said at the shower? This isn't about that," I insisted, though we both knew it partly was. Something isn't right, and Thomas is completely blind to it. Later that afternoon, sorting through the mail, I found an envelope addressed to Anna from a law firm I didn't recognize, Westfield and Associates. My fingers itched to open it, but I placed it on the side table instead. When I heard her come in, I busied myself with folding laundry. "Mail came for you," I said casually. She snatched the envelope, her eyes widening slightly. "Thanks," she muttered, tucking it quickly into her purse. That night, while Thomas and Anna were watching TV downstairs, I excused myself and went upstairs. My conscience battled briefly with my growing suspicion as I stood outside their bedroom door. Then I remembered Anna's cruel toast, the look of smug superiority on her face, and my resolve strengthened. Their room, formerly my guest room, was immaculate except for Anna's nightstand. I opened the drawer carefully, my heart pounding against my ribs. Inside were prenatal vitamins, hand cream, and a small black address book I'd never seen before. I flipped through it, finding several names and numbers I didn't recognize. But one name appeared multiple times, Robert W. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and left the room quietly. Back in my bedroom, I logged on to my computer. Thomas had set up Facebook for me years ago, insisting I needed to join the modern world, and I rarely used it. But now I typed Anna Thompson into the search bar. Her profile appeared, filled with pregnancy updates and photos of her and Thomas. Nothing suspicious there. But when I clicked on her friends list and searched for Robert W., there he was, Robert Wilson, his profile picture showing a handsome man in his 30s. I clicked through to his page, and my breath caught. There in a photo dated just 2 years ago were Robert and Anna, arms around each other, looking very much like a couple. I scrolled further, more photos of them together, spanning several years. The most recent from just 8 months ago, around the time Anna had announced her pregnancy. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. Anna had been with Thomas for only a year and a half. These photos suggested her relationship with Robert had overlapped significantly with her relationship with my son. The next morning, I waited until Anna had left for another of her mysterious appointments before calling Thomas at work. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Everything's fine," I assured him. "I just wanted to ask you something. Does Anna ever mention someone named Robert Wilson?" Silence hung on the line. Then, "Her ex-boyfriend. Why are you asking about him?" I chose my words carefully. "I was just curious. She mentioned him in passing." "Oh, well, they were together for a long time before she and I met. But that's ancient history." His voice hardened slightly. "Mom, I hope you're not creating problems where there aren't any. Anna's pregnant with your grandchild. Please try to be supportive." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, turning my wedding ring around my finger, a habit I'd developed whenever I was troubled. Thomas's words echoed in my mind, ancient history. But what if it wasn't? What if Anna's past with Robert was very much her present and about to become my son's future that afternoon? Sorting through old photographs in the basement, I found a picture of myself at 30, pregnant with Thomas. James stood beside me, his hand protectively covering my swollen belly, love radiating from his smile. I traced his face with my fingertip. "What would you do, James?" I whispered to the empty room. As if in answer, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Carla from Dr. Lowenstein's office. Just confirming Anna's appointment for tomorrow at 2 p.m. I stared at the message, confusion washing over me. Dr. Lowenstein wasn't Anna's obstetrician doctor. Martinez was. I'd accompanied her to an appointment just last month. With shaking fingers, I typed back, "Thank you for the reminder." I set down my phone, my suspicions crystallizing into something more concrete. Anna was definitely hiding something big enough to lie about doctor's appointments, something connected to her ex-boyfriend, something that might affect my unborn grandchild. I thought about the letter from the law firm, the secret phone calls, the mysterious appointments. A terrible suspicion was taking shape in my mind, one that threatened not just my place in this house, but the foundation of my son's marriage and the future of his family. The next day, I sat in my car across the street from the medical building, my heart pounding against my ribs. I told myself this wasn't stalking, this was protecting my son. Still, my hands trembled slightly as I gripped the steering wheel. At precisely 1:45 p.m., Anna's red SUV pulled into the parking lot. She emerged wearing large sunglasses and a scarf over her hair despite the mild weather. Even from a distance, I could see her checking her surroundings before entering the building. The directory in the lobby listed Dr. Edward Lowenstein as a family law attorney, not a doctor at all. My suspicions crystallized into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I waited 30 minutes before approaching the receptionist, a young woman with sympathetic eyes. "I'm Felicia Thompson," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My daughter-in-law, Anna Thompson, has an appointment with Mr. Lowenstein today. I was supposed to meet her, but I'm running late." The receptionist checked her computer. "Yes, Mrs. Thompson is with Mr. Lowenstein now. Would you like to wait? They shouldn't be much longer." "Actually," I improvised, "could you tell me what floor his office is on? I'd like to freshen up before I see her." "Third floor, suite 308-ish." I thanked her and headed to the elevator, my heart racing. I had no intention of barging into the attorney's office. I just needed to confirm Anna was really there. Through the frosted glass door of suite 308, I could make out two silhouettes, a man in a suit and a woman whose profile was unmistakably Anna's. This was no prenatal appointment. This was a meeting with a lawyer. As I turned to leave, the elevator opened, and a tall man stepped out. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized him instantly from the Facebook photos, Robert Wilson. I ducked around the corner, watching as he approached Dr. A. Lowenstein's office and went inside. The pieces were falling into place, each one more disturbing than the last. That evening, as Thomas and Anna chatted about nursery colors, I sat silently picking at my dinner. The cheerful domestic scene felt like a theatrical performance I was watching from the outside. "You're quiet tonight, Mom," Thomas commented, finally noticing my silence. I forced a smile. "Just tired." Anna yawned dramatically. "I know what you mean. Growing a human is exhausting." She patted her belly. "I think I'll turn in early." As soon as she left, Thomas leaned closer. "Mom, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." For a moment, I considered telling him everything: the fake doctor appointment, the meeting with the lawyer, Robert Wilson's appearance. But the words died in my throat. I needed more information before potentially destroying my son's marriage. "I'm fine," I assured him. "Just old lady things." He winced. "About what Anna said at the shower. You know she was just joking, right? Nobody's sending you to a nursing home." I studied my son's face, the boy I'd raised alone after James died, the man who now seemed like a stranger. "And if she wasn't joking," Thomas sighed, "Mom, Anna loves this house. She thinks it's the perfect place to raise our baby. But that doesn't mean we want to get rid of you, doesn't it?" I challenged softly. Before he could respond, his phone chimed with a text. He glanced at it, his expression shifting subtly. "Work emergency. I need to make a call." He squeezed my shoulder as he left. "We'll talk more later." "Okay." I watched him go, doubt gnawing at my insides. Was I wrong about everything? Was I creating conspiracy theories because of one thoughtless comment? The next morning, I made my decision. I called the one person I knew would help me without judgment. "Catherine Sullivan Investigations," a crisp voice answered. "Catherine, it's Felicia Thompson." "Felicia, it's been ages. How are you?" Catherine and I had taught together at Oak Ridge High for 20 years before she retired and opened a private investigation firm. She specialized in domestic cases, mainly cheating spouses and hidden assets. "I need your help," I said, explaining the situation as concisely as possible. 2 days later, we met at a cafe across town. Catherine handed me a manila envelope, her expression grave. "You were right to be suspicious," she said. "Anna has been meeting Robert Wilson regularly for months. They were spotted at a hotel last week, and that law firm specializes in custody arrangements and paternity cases." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs of Anna and Robert together, date-stamped images showing them entering a hotel, holding hands in a park, embracing outside the lawyer's office. The most recent was taken just 3 days ago. "There's more," Catherine said gently. "Anna has been shifting money from your son's accounts into a separate one only she can access. She's also been inquiring about property values on your house." "My house," I echoed, stunned. "There's a document in there, a draft agreement Robert signed, giving up parental rights in exchange for a significant financial settlement." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The baby was Robert's, not Thomas's. Anna was planning to use my son as financial support while maintaining her relationship with Robert. And my house, the home I'd shared with James, where I'd raised Thomas, was part of her calculation. "What are you going to do?" Catherine asked. I folded the photos back into the envelope, my mind racing. "I need one more piece of information," I said finally. "I need to be absolutely certain about the baby." "DNA testing is simple these days," Catherine explained as we sat in the corner of the quiet cafe. "But you'd need samples from both Thomas and the baby after birth." I stared into my cooling tea, my resolve strengthening. "I'll wait until after the birth." The drive home was a blur. I kept seeing Anna's smug face at the baby shower, hearing her cruel words when the old lady goes to the nursing home. She'd been planning to push me out all along, to take my home, to use my son. And Thomas, blinded by her manipulation, couldn't or wouldn't see it. Back home, I found Anna in the nursery, what used to be James's home office, directing Thomas as he assembled a crib. "This room is too small," she was saying. "If we converted your mom's bedroom instead..." Thomas looked uncomfortable. "We've talked about this. Anna, that's Mom's room." "For now," she muttered. Not seeing me in the doorway, I stepped back silently, clutching Catherine's envelope to my chest. Now I understood what was happening. This wasn't just about a nursery or a thoughtless comment. This was about a calculated plan to take everything my son, my home, my dignity. 2 months crept by like molasses. I lived in my own home like a ghost, watching Anna's belly grow while her lies multiplied. Every day brought fresh evidence of her deception, hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room, mysterious appointments, and increasingly bold hints about reorganizing the house after the baby arrived. Thomas remained oblivious, working longer hours as the due date approached. He'd been promoted to senior account manager, a development that Anna celebrated with expensive champagne, though she drank sparkling cider, making a show of her sacrifice for the baby. My son was building a future on quicksand, and I was the only one who knew it. "Have you thought about what you'll do after?" Margaret asked during our weekly coffee date. She was the only person besides Catherine who knew the full extent of my suspicions. "After what?" "After you tell Thomas the truth." I set down my spoon. "If I'm right, everything changes. If I'm wrong..." I couldn't finish the sentence. If I was wrong, I'd destroy my relationship with my son for nothing. "You're not wrong," Margaret said firmly. "Catherine's evidence is solid. The question is, what happens next?" What happened next arrived sooner than expected. 2 weeks before her due date, Anna went into labor. Thomas called me from the hospital, his voice shaking with a mixture of panic and excitement. "Mom, it's happening. We're at Memorial. Can you bring the hospital bag? It's by the front door." As I gathered Anna's things, a small cosmetic bag fell from the larger duffel. Inside were her prenatal vitamins, lip balm, and a folded document. My hands trembled as I opened it, another draft agreement with Robert Wilson's signature, updated with specific financial terms and a clause about visitation rights. My suspicions had been correct all along. The baby wasn't Thomas's. At the hospital, I found Thomas pacing outside the delivery room, his face pale but radiant. "How is she?" I asked, handing him the bag. "Progressing fast. The doctor says it won't be long now." He embraced me suddenly. "I'm going to be a dad, Mom." My heart broke for him. "Yes," I said, unable to say more. Hours later, amid a flurry of nurses and the beeping of monitors, Anna gave birth to a baby boy, 7 pounds, 8 ounces of what she claimed was Thomas's flesh and blood. My son wept as he held his son. "We're naming him James," he said softly, "after Dad." The knife twisted deeper. They had taken not just my home, my place in the family, but now James's name too, all built on a foundation of lies. I held the baby, studying his tiny features. He had Anna's nose and mouth, but his eyes. Something about them reminded me of the photos I'd seen of Robert Wilson. "He's beautiful," I managed. After Thomas stepped out to call friends with the news, I approached the hospital bassinet. The nurse had just finished a routine blood draw from the baby's heel for standard newborn screening. The gauze pad with a small spot of dried blood sat on the side table, ready to be discarded. My heart pounding, I slipped it into my purse when no one was looking. That evening, I called Catherine. "I need your help again," I said quietly, explaining about the baby's birth. "I have a sample from the baby. How do I get one from Thomas?" Catherine's voice was grim. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this, Felicia? Once you know for certain, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said, thinking of Thomas's joyful tears, of Anna's smug smile when she'd announced they were using James's name. "I need to protect my son." The next morning, I arrived at the hospital with bagels and coffee for Thomas, who had spent the night in a chair beside Anna's bed. "You look exhausted," I told him, handing him a coffee. "Why don't you go home and shower? I'll stay with Anna and the baby." Thomas hesitated, then nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Mom. I won't be long." After he left, I watched Anna sleeping, the baby in a bassinet beside her. She looked peaceful, satisfied, a woman who thought she had successfully pulled off her deception. At home, I collected what I needed: Thomas's hairbrush with strands of his dark hair still caught in the bristles, and the gauze with baby James's blood. I packaged them carefully according to Catherine's instructions and addressed the overnight envelope to the lab she had recommended. Results in 3 days. The technician had promised when I called to arrange the test. 3 more days of living with this knowledge alone. 3 more days of watching my son fall deeper in love with a child who might not be his. The days passed in a blur of hospital visits, flower deliveries, and preparations for bringing the baby home. Anna was suddenly solicitous, almost friendly toward me, a complete reversal from her behavior before the birth. "Felicia, would you mind holding James while I shower?" she asked sweetly on the day before their discharge. The nurse showed me how to wrap him just the way he likes, and I took the bundle, wondering at her change of heart. Later, as she settled into the hospital bed with freshly brushed hair, She smiled at me. "Thomas and I have been talking," she said. "We think you should stay in your bedroom after all." Relief flooded me until she continued. "At least until James is sleeping through the night. Then we can reassess." The familiar anger burned low in my stomach. Nothing had changed. She was still planning to push me out. She'd just adjusted her timeline. That evening, an email arrived from the testing service. "Results available." My hands shook as I clicked the link and entered the secure password Catherine had provided. The clinical language was stark and unambiguous. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. This conclusion is based on the non-matching alleles observed at the DNA loci listed above. The probability of paternity is 0%. I sat motionless, staring at the screen. Even after all my suspicions, seeing the scientific confirmation was staggering. Thomas was not baby James's father. Anna had deceived him completely. I printed the results, folded the paper carefully, and placed it in my purse. Tomorrow, Thomas would bring Anna and the baby home. They would begin their life as a family built entirely on Anna's lies. As I prepared for bed, my phone chimed with a text from Thomas. "Can't wait for you to see James in his nursery tomorrow. Anna says thanks for being so supportive." I set the phone down without responding. Supportive. Is that what they thought I was being? Little did they know what tomorrow would bring. I lay awake for hours, rehearsing what I would say, how I would present the evidence. Would Thomas believe me? Would he hate me for destroying his happiness? Would he eventually thank me for saving him from a lifetime with a woman who had betrayed him so fundamentally? Morning came too quickly. I heard Thomas's car pull up, the front door open, Anna's voice cooing to the baby. "Welcome home, little James. This is your house now." I took a deep breath, touched the test results in my pocket for courage, and went downstairs to meet them. The moment of truth had arrived, and there would be no turning back. I had imagined this moment for weeks, the confrontation, the revelation, the aftermath, but nothing prepared me for the reality of watching my son carry that tiny bundle through the front door, his face alight with joy and pride as he showed the baby the home where he himself had grown up. "Welcome home, little James," Thomas cooed, carrying the infant into the living room while Anna followed, her hand resting protectively on the baby carrier. "Let me take your bags," I offered, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the DNA results burning a hole in my pocket. "Thanks, Felicia," Anna beamed. "You're such a help." The saccharine sweetness in her voice made my stomach turn. She'd been uncharacteristically kind to me since the baby's birth. No doubt part of her strategy to keep her deception intact. As I carried her overnight bag upstairs, I noticed several text notifications lighting up her phone screen. I couldn't help seeing the name at the top, Robert W. And downstairs, Thomas had settled on the sofa with the baby while Anna fussed over pillows and blankets. "Mom, come sit with us," he called. "I think he has your eyes." The irony of his statement hit me like a physical blow. I sank into the armchair across from them, watching this tableau of domestic bliss that was built entirely on lies. "Thomas," I started, then faltered. How does one begin such a conversation? "I need to talk to you both about something important." Can it wait, Mom?" Thomas asked, not looking up from the baby's face. "We're pretty tired." "No," I said firmly. "It can't wait." Something in my tone made both of them look up. Anna's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of wariness crossing her face. "What is it?" Thomas asked, finally giving me his full attention. I took a deep breath. Before I say anything, I want you to know that I love you. Thomas, everything I've done has been to protect you. And protect me from what? Confusion clouded his expression. From her, I said, looking directly at Anna. From her lies. Anna's face hardened instantly. What are you talking about? I know everything. Anna, about Robert Wilson, about the lawyer, about the money you've been moving from Thomas's accounts. I turned to my son, and I know about the baby. Thomas's brow furrowed. Mom, what are you saying? The baby isn't yours. Thomas. The words hung in the air between us. Irrevocable. Anna let out a harsh laugh. That's ridiculous. Felicia, I think you need help. This obsession you have with undermining our family. I have proof, I interrupted, pulling the folded lab results from my pocket. I had a DNA test done. Thomas's face drained of color. You did what? How could you do something like that behind our backs? Because she's been lying to you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She's been seeing Robert Wilson throughout your marriage. They were together when she got pregnant. That's insane, Anna snapped, but I noticed her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the baby. Thomas, don't listen to her. She's just jealous because we're starting our own family. She can't stand not being the center of your world anymore. I ignored her, extending the lab report toward Thomas. Read it yourself. The results are clear. Thomas stared at the paper but didn't take it. I don't need to read anything. This is my son. And no, Thomas, as I said gently, he's not. Anna moved to stand between us. I won't let you destroy this family with your paranoid delusions. If this is about that stupid toast at the baby shower, get over it. It was a joke. A joke, I echoed, anger rising in my chest. Like your marriage is a joke. Like the vows you made to my son were a joke. Mom, stop, Thomas pleaded, his voice cracking. You're upset because you think we're pushing you out, but this has gone too far. I have more proof, I said, reaching into my purse for Catherine's envelope. Photographs of Anna with Robert, financial records, a draft agreement where Robert signs away parental rights in exchange for money. Your money. Thomas. Anna's face contorted with rage. You had me investigated. You're sick. Look at the evidence. Thomas, I urged, spreading the photographs on the coffee table. Look at the dates. Look at her with him while she was pregnant with your supposed child. Thomas's eyes flicked reluctantly to the images, Anna and Robert outside the lawyer's office, holding hands in a park, entering a hotel. His expression shifted from disbelief to dawning horror. These could be old pictures, he said weakly, but I could see doubt creeping in. The dates are on them, I pointed out. And here's the agreement I found in her hospital bag. He's giving up rights to the baby in exchange for a settlement, money that would come from you, Thomas. The room went deadly quiet. The baby began to fuss in Thomas's arms, as if sensing the tension. Anna. Thomas's voice was barely audible. Tell me this isn't true. Anna's expression changed, calculation replacing anger as she realized denial was futile. She gently took the baby from Thomas's arms, as if needing something to hold on to while her world collapsed around her. Fine. You want the truth? She lifted her chin defiantly. Yes, James is Robert's biological child. And the room seemed to shrink around us. Thomas sat frozen, staring at Anna as if seeing a stranger. But we agreed, Anna continued. You and Robert agreed. Thomas interrupted, his voice hollow with shock. About my life, about me raising another man's child without knowing. It was for the best, Anna insisted, bouncing the baby gently as he began to fuss. Robert wasn't ready to be a father, but he didn't want me to get an abortion. You wanted a family. It was a perfect solution. A perfect solution, Thomas repeated, his face ashen, to use me as a human ATM while you continued seeing him, to let me believe this child was mine. He looked down at the photos again, focusing on the most recent ones, where Anna was visibly pregnant. You were still sleeping with him while carrying his child, while married to me. It's complicated, Anna said, her voice hardening as she realized her charm was useless now. But the fact remains, we're a family now. James needs a father, and that father is you. The DNA doesn't matter. Thomas looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. The DNA doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. Did you ever love me at all? Of course I did, she said. But her eyes slid away from his. I still do. But you need to understand. I understand perfectly. Thomas cut her off. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a pain that broke my heart. You knew all along, didn't you? That's why you've been acting so strange. I nodded. I suspected after the baby shower. The way she talked about sending me away, it wasn't just about making room for the baby. It was about taking over this house, taking your money, using you. Thomas sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. I can't believe this is happening. Anna clutched the baby tighter, her demeanor shifting from defiance to calculation. Thomas, think about what you're doing. This is your son in every way that matters. We can get past this. Your mother is trying to come between us because she's afraid of losing her place in your life. I started to protest, but Thomas looked up, his expression suddenly clear and resolute. No, Anna, she was protecting me from you. He stood up, taking a step away from her. I want you out of this house tonight. What? Anna gasped, genuine shock replacing her calculated expressions. You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go with a newborn? To Robert, Thomas said coldly, since you two planned this whole thing together. You're making a mistake, Anna hissed, her mask finally slipping completely. You'll regret this. Both of you will. She gathered the baby's things with jerky movements while Thomas stood motionless, as if in shock. I moved to my son's side, resting my hand gently on his arm. I'm so sorry. Thomas, I whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. And he covered my hand with his own. You didn't hurt me. Mom, she did. As Anna stormed upstairs to collect her belongings, Thomas turned to me, his eyes haunted. How am I supposed to move forward from this? I squeezed his hand, wishing I could take away his pain. One day at a time. Together, Anna returned with a hastily packed suitcase, the baby secured in his carrier. At the door, she turned back, her face contorted with fury. This isn't over. You'll hear from my lawyer. So will you, Thomas replied, his voice steadier than I expected. About the money you stole, the fraud you committed. After the door slammed behind her, the house fell into a heavy silence. Thomas stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The nursery upstairs, once James's office, briefly baby James's room, now stood empty, a monument to Anna's deception. The future we had all imagined had vanished in an instant, replaced by uncertainty and pain. But as I watched my son straighten his shoulders and turn away from the door, I felt a flicker of hope. The truth, however painful, had set him free from a life built on lies. I'll make some tea, I said softly, touching his arm. Thomas nodded, following me to the kitchen with slow steps. We sat at the table where our family had shared thousands of meals, where Thomas had done his homework as a child, where James and I had planned our dreams. "I loved her," Thomas said finally, his voice breaking. "I really loved her." "I know you did," I replied, passing him a steaming mug. "That's what makes her betrayal so cruel. And the baby." His voice trailed off, and I saw the grief wash over his face again. "I already loved him too." "Of course you did," I said gently. "You're a good man with a good heart, Thomas, just like your father." At the mention of James, Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Dad would have seen through her immediately, wouldn't he? I smiled sadly. He always did have a knack for spotting phonies. "I should have listened to you sooner," he said. "All those times you tried to tell me something wasn't right. You wanted to believe in her." I interrupted. "That's not a flaw, Thomas. That's what love is supposed to be about. Trust." As darkness fell outside, we sat together in the kitchen, coming to terms with what had happened and what was yet to come. The legal battles, the emotional aftermath, the slow process of rebuilding trust and faith in the world. But at least we would face it together, with truth as our foundation. 6 months can change everything. The harsh winter that had gripped our lives after Anna's departure slowly thawed into a tentative spring of recovery and rebuilding. The legal battles had been swift and brutal. Anna had indeed gone to Robert, who wanted nothing to do with sudden fatherhood or the mess she'd created. She'd hired an aggressive lawyer, demanding alimony and child support from Thomas, despite the DNA evidence. But Catherine's documentation proved invaluable, especially the financial records showing how Anna had systematically drained Thomas's accounts. In the end, the judge had been unmoved by Anna's tearful performance. "Mrs. Thompson," he'd said, peering over his glasses, "this court doesn't reward fraud." And the case was dismissed, leaving Anna with nothing but the consequences of her own deception. I stood in what had once been James's office, then briefly Anna's planned nursery, watching Thomas apply the final strokes of paint to the walls. The warm terracotta color brightened the room, transforming it into something new and hopeful. "What do you think?" he asked, stepping back to admire his work. "It's perfect," I said. "James would have loved it." Thomas smiled a real smile that reached his eyes, something I hadn't seen in months. "Think it works as an art studio." The art studio had been his idea. "Mom, you always wanted to paint," he'd said one evening as we sorted through old photographs. "You gave it up to raise me after Dad died. It's time you had something for yourself." I hadn't touched a paintbrush in 30 years. Not since James's cancer diagnosis had derailed our plans for me to study art after Thomas started school. Life had intervened, as it often does, and dreams had been set aside for more pressing realities. But now, at 65, I was finally circling back to the passion of my youth. "It's more than I ever imagined," I admitted, running my hand over the easel Thomas had assembled the night before. "But are you sure you don't want this space for yourself? This is your home, too." Thomas set down his paintbrush and faced me fully. "Mom, this has always been your home." I was the one who forgot that for a while. The months following Anna's departure had been a time of painful revelations. Thomas had discovered more evidence of her deception credit cards he hadn't known about, loans taken in his name, plans for selling the house that she'd researched behind his back. "I still can't believe how blind I was," he said, his expression clouding momentarily. I touched his arm gently. She was very convincing. "She knew exactly what you wanted and what I needed," he added quietly. "A family, a future." He shook his head. I was so desperate to build something of my own that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. "We all make mistakes," I said. The important thing is learning from them. Thomas had certainly learned. After Anna, he'd focused on rebuilding his finances, his career, his relationship with me. He'd moved back into his old bedroom temporarily, though we both knew he'd eventually find his own place again. For now, we were healing together, rediscovering the easy companionship we'd had before Anna came between us. I walked to the window, which Thomas had cleaned until it gleamed. The view of our backyard garden, which I'd neglected during Anna's tenure, was coming back to life with spring bulbs I'd planted decades ago. Persistent. They emerged year after year, despite neglect or harsh conditions, like resilience made visible. "I've been thinking," Thomas said, joining me at the window, "about taking some classes at the community college, maybe finally getting that business degree." "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, remembering how Anna had discouraged his educational aspirations, insisting they couldn't afford it even as she siphoned money into her secret accounts. "And I thought maybe you could look into those art classes at the senior center," he continued. "Margaret mentioned they have an excellent instructor on Wednesdays." I smiled at his enthusiasm. One creative pursuit at a time. Let me get comfortable with the studio first. We worked together, cleaning the brushes and storing the painting supplies. The room was coming together beautifully, easel by the window for the northern light, shelves for supplies, a comfortable chair for reflection. Thomas had even found my old sketchbooks in the attic, preserved in a plastic bin all these years. "Look," he said, turning to a pencil drawing I'd done of him as a child, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while James helped him. "You captured Dad perfectly, that little furrow he got between his eyebrows when he was concentrating." I touched the yellowed page gently. "He was so proud of you. He would be even prouder now." Thomas closed the sketchbook carefully. "I hope so." That evening, we ordered pizza, a simple pleasure we'd rarely indulged in during Anna's time with us. She'd always insisted on cooking elaborate meals she claimed were Thomas's favorites, though I'd never seen him particularly enjoy them. As we sat in the living room with our pizza and a bottle of wine, Thomas raised his glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. Later, as I prepared for bed, I paused at the door of my new studio. Moonlight filtered through the uncurtained window, illuminating the empty canvas on the easel blank, waiting, full of possibility. Like the next chapter of my life. In the morning, I would make my first brush strokes. I had no illusions about becoming a great artist at 65, but that wasn't the point. The point was reclaiming something precious that had been set aside for too long. The point was remembering that even in life's winter, new growth is possible. I closed the door softly and went to bed, sleeping more soundly than I had in months. In my dreams, James stood beside an easel, smiling encouragement as colors flowed from my brush. "It's about time, Ruth," he said. "You've always put everyone else first." Not anymore, I thought, as I drifted deeper into peaceful sleep. Not anymore. "The garden club ladies are coming over later," I reminded Thomas as he helped me arrange fresh flowers in the living room. "Margaret's bringing her famous lemon bars." Thomas grinned. "I know. That's why I made sure to finish painting the studio early." He gathered up his tools. "I've got some work calls to make, but I'll be down for dinner." After he left, I stood alone in my new studio, marveling at how life can circle back on itself. 6 months ago, I'd been an unwanted fixture in my own home, someone to be tolerated until a convenient time to ship me off to a nursing home. Now I was reclaiming space, not just in the house, but in my own life. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the window, I could see Margaret's car in the driveway, along with several others. The garden club had expanded in recent months, growing from our original 5 members to nearly 15 women, all over 60, all with stories of their own. It had started innocently enough. After word got out about what happened with Anna, women from the neighborhood began stopping by. Some brought casseroles, others just coffee and conversation. Many had their own tales of toxic relationships, controlling children, manipulative in-laws, dismissive husbands. In their company, I found unexpected solidarity. "We've been invisible for too long," Eleanor had declared during one of our early gatherings. At 72, she'd recently left her husband of 50 years after discovering he'd been gaslighting her about her memory problems while carrying on with a younger woman. It's time we started taking up space again. That sentiment had resonated with all of us. The garden club became more than just discussions about perennials and pruning techniques. It became a place where women in their 6th, 7th, and 8th decades could speak honestly about reclaiming their lives, their homes, their very identities. I opened the door to find Margaret bearing her promised lemon bars, flanked by Eleanor and our newest member, Barbara, a retired judge who'd taken a particular interest in our legal rights as senior women. "Felicia," Margaret embraced me warmly. "The others are right behind us. Eleanor brought those gardening catalogs you asked about." As the women filtered in, filling my home with chatter and laughter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. These connections had been an unexpected gift from the wreckage of Anna's deception. Later, as we gathered in the sunroom, teacups in hand and garden plans spread across the table, Barbara tapped her spoon against her cup for attention. "Ladies, I have an announcement," she said, her judicial authority still evident in her bearing. "The Senior Center has offered us space for weekly art classes. They were quite impressed with our community garden project and want to expand our partnership." Murmurs of approval rippled through the group. Our garden project transforming an abandoned lot near the community center into a thriving space of flowers, vegetables, and herbs had given many of us purpose during the dark winter months. "Felicia," Barbara continued, turning to me, "we were hoping you might consider leading some beginner painting sessions. Thomas mentioned you were quite talented in your youth." I felt a flush of pleasure mixed with trepidation. I haven't painted seriously in decades. Eleanor waved away my protest. "None of us have done half the things we're doing now in decades. That's the point." Laughter rippled through the room, warm and genuine. "I'll think about it," I promised, already imagining what I might teach, how I might structure classes for women who, like me, were discovering or rediscovering creative outlets in their later years. We spent the afternoon discussing plans for expanding the community garden. Dorothy, a retired landscape architect, had drawn up designs for a meditation labyrinth surrounded by lavender and rosemary. Judith, who had taught botany before retiring, suggested native plants that would attract pollinators and require minimal maintenance. "What if we added a section specifically for children?" I suggested, thinking of the daycare center next to the community building. Simple plants they could help tend, maybe some sunflowers and cherry tomatoes they could harvest themselves. The idea sparked an enthusiastic discussion about intergenerational gardening and the importance of passing on knowledge to younger community members. "That's what I love about this group," Margaret said later, as she helped me wash teacups. "We're not just focused on ourselves. We're building something that will outlast us." As the afternoon waned, the women began gathering their things. Margaret stayed behind, helping me clear away the last of the dessert plates. "You seem happy," she observed, studying my face. genuinely happy. I considered this as I rinsed a teacup. I am, I realized, not despite everything that happened, but because of it. Had Anna never made that cruel toast at the baby shower, had she never revealed her true nature so blatantly, I might have continued fading into the background of my own life, accommodating everyone else's needs while neglecting my own. Instead, I had reclaimed not just my home, but myself. I was painting again. I had meaningful friendships. I had a healthier relationship with my son than ever before. And now I was part of a community of women who were redefining what it meant to age with purpose and dignity. Next meeting at the community garden, Margaret asked as she prepared to leave. Perfect, I replied. I want to see how those heritage roses we planted are doing. As I closed the door behind my friend, I caught sight of my reflection in the hall mirror. The woman looking back at me stood straighter, smiled more easily, and had a spark in her eyes that had been missing for years. Anna's cruel words had not diminished me. They had, ironically, helped me grow into something stronger and more vibrant than before, like a garden after winter. I was blooming again. Thomas and I sat on the back porch, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. James and I had spent countless evenings just like this, planning our future, dreaming together. Now, in the gentle stillness of early summer, I could feel healing settling over us both like a soft blanket. I enrolled in that business management course, Thomas said, breaking the comfortable silence. The one that would let me start my own agency eventually. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely pleased. He'd been talking about breaking away from his corporate job for years, but Anna had always discouraged it, preferring the security of his steady paycheck, which we now knew she had been systematically diverting into her private accounts. The professor's already offering me connections with local entrepreneurs, he continued, a spark of excitement in his voice that I hadn't heard in a long time. There's this whole network of independent marketing consultants who collaborate on bigger projects, but maintain their own client base. I sipped my tea, watching him with quiet pride. Thomas had always been creative and personable traits that made him excellent in marketing, but were stifled in the corporate environment where he'd been working. It's more flexible than what I'm doing now, he explained. More creative control, more direct client relationships. I'd have to build up to a full client roster, of course, but I could start part-time while keeping my current job. Your father always said you had an entrepreneurial spirit. I told him, remember that lemonade stand you set up when you were 10? You didn't just sell lemonade, you created a whole experience with different flavors and those little umbrellas you made from colored paper. Thomas laughed. I'd forgotten about that. Didn't I make more money in one weekend than my entire allowance for the month? You did, I confirmed. James was so proud. He said you had the touch understanding what people want before they even know they want it. A comfortable silence fell between us again. Across the yard, a family of rabbits ventured out from under the hedge, tentatively exploring the twilight garden. Dad would have handled the Anna situation better than I did, Thomas said finally, his voice softer. He wouldn't have been taken in by her. You don't know that, I countered gently. James had his blind spots too. He trusted people. That's not a flaw, Thomas. He nodded, seeming to accept this. Speaking of trust, he said after a moment, I've been seeing someone. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I felt a flutter of both hope and concern. It had only been 6 months since the Anna debacle. Oh, just coffee so far, he added quickly, catching my hesitation. Nothing serious, but she's different, grounded, real. Tell me about her, I encouraged, genuinely curious. Her name is Rachel Sullivan, he said. She's a librarian at the university. We met when I was researching business programs. I smiled at the thought of my son, who had always been more interested in the creative side of business than the academic spending time in a university library. She's about my age, divorced 5 years ago, no kids, but she volunteers with the literacy program for disadvantaged children. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. She's straightforward. Mom, no games, no hidden agendas. When she says something, she means it. After Anna's elaborate deceptions, I could understand why such honesty would appeal to Thomas. She sounds lovely, I said sincerely. She suggested the business program. Actually, Thomas continued, she said it's never too late to change direction. That really resonated with me after everything. The lightness in his voice, the way his hands moved animatedly as he spoke, these were signs of the old Thomas returning, the one who approached life with enthusiasm rather than the cautious, subdued man Anna had gradually molded him into. I'd like to meet her when you're ready, I said. Thomas nodded. I think you'd like her. She has this quiet confidence that reminds me a bit of you. Actually, I raised an eyebrow, touched by the comparison. I'm taking it slow this time, he assured me. Really getting to know her? He turned to look at me directly. And I promise, Mom, the next time someone proposes a toast about sending you to a nursing home, I'll be the first one to show them the door. I laughed, surprised by how the memory of that painful moment no longer had the power to hurt me. I'll hold you to that. He reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you that day. I should have. We've both learned a lot, I acknowledged, about standing up for ourselves and for each other. The fireflies were out in force now, their gentle lights blinking on and off throughout the garden like earthbound stars. A light breeze carried the scent of the roses I'd recently planted along the fence, a gift from the garden club ladies to celebrate 6 months of our community garden project. Thomas stretched and stood up. Almost forgot I brought home some material samples for the curtains in your studio. They're on the kitchen counter when you want to look at them. After he went inside, I remained on the porch, savoring the peaceful evening. Thomas was finding his way back to himself, to the man he was meant to be before Anna's manipulation. He was pursuing education, considering entrepreneurship, and even beginning to open his heart again, cautiously, but with hope. The past 6 months had been a journey of recovery for both of us. Thomas was rebuilding his confidence and dreams. I was reclaiming my creativity and independence. Together, we had remade our home into what it was always meant to be, a sanctuary of truth, growth, and unconditional love. And for that, ironically, we had Anna to thank. As night settled around us, I thought about the journey we'd traveled since that baby shower, the pain, the betrayal, the rebuilding. All of it had led us here, to this moment of quiet contentment. Anna had meant to diminish me, to erase me from my son's life, and claim my home as her own. Instead, she had inadvertently given me the push I needed to reclaim my voice, my space, my very self. I was 65 years old, and far from being relegated to a nursing home. I was just beginning a new chapter filled with art and friendship, purpose and joy, one where I no longer made myself small to accommodate others' ambitions. Look, Thomas pointed upward, where the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Remember how Dad used to name the constellations for me? I remember, I said softly. In that moment, I felt James's presence acutely, as if he were sitting with us, approving of all that had happened, all that was yet to come. The last light of day faded, but I wasn't afraid of the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new beginnings, my first painting in decades, perhaps my agreement to teach at the senior center, definitely more garden planning with my friends. Anna's cruel toast had not defined me. Instead, it had freed me to become more fully myself than I had been in years. And for that, ironically, I would always be grateful. Sometimes, the greatest pain brings the most transformative growth. My story reminds us that it's never too late to reclaim your power, to stand in your truth, and to create a life that honors your authentic self. Many of us, especially as we age, gradually allow ourselves to be pushed into smaller and smaller spaces physically, emotionally, spiritually. We accommodate others. We shrink our dreams. We accept less than we deserve. We begin to believe the narrative that our most vibrant days are behind us. But what I've learned is that every chapter of life offers new possibilities if we have the courage to claim them. Sometimes it takes a crisis, a betrayal, a loss, a cruel comment to awaken us to our own strength and worth. These painful moments can be doorways to our most authentic selves, if only we're brave enough to walk through them. Your life doesn't diminish with age, it deepens. Your value doesn't decrease, it transforms. And your voice doesn't need to grow quieter, in fact. With the wisdom of your years, perhaps it's time it grew louder. What corners of your life are you allowing yourself to be pushed out of? What dreams have you set aside? What parts of yourself are waiting to be reclaimed? I'd love to hear your story. Please share in the comments below how you've reclaimed your power or how you plan to. And let's create a community of people supporting each other through life's later chapters, reminding one another that the most beautiful blooms often come in life's autumn. If you found inspiration in my journey, please subscribe to follow more stories of resilience and renewal. Together, we'll explore how life's most painful moments can become catalysts for our greatest transformations. Remember, it's never too late to become who you were meant to be.